Have you ever felt that as a Muslim woman, there are not enough Islamic programs out there dedicated to just you? Have you ever had questions run through your mind about your role as a Muslim woman, your rights and responsibilities, or just general matters? Just Us Women is a program dedicated to you, the Muslim woman. Islam Life Radio has tailored Just Us Women to meet the needs of our Muslim sisters in order for them to gain authentic knowledge. Our host and teacher for this program, Ummu Maahir Ismaa'eel, will deliver and expand your minds on various topics related to women's fiqh, motivational talks, and how to be among the best women to earn Allah Azza wa Jal's pleasure in this life and the next, insha'Allah. So be sure to join us every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Just Us Women, brought to you by IslamLifeRadio.com.
Provocative. Education coming full circle. From the author of Muhammad's Role in Islam, 50 Concepts Brought by Muhammad, Holy Wars, Crusades, Jihad, Biography and Mission of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, is the host and author Jalal Abu al-Rub. Provocative challenges false perceptions and misconceptions about Islam, the Quran, Muhammad, and Islamic law. Not intimidated and unafraid to answer all questions about Islam according to Allah's book and Islam's messenger. Tune in to listen and or engage the host with hopes, doubts, criticism, or fears as we bring your Islamic education full circle by spreading the truth of what Allah has ordained on His creation. Provocative. Education coming full circle.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Are you experiencing a difficult situation? Going through stress, anxiety, confusion, or even depression? Perhaps something's troubling you and you don't know who to ask and where. Maybe you've done a sin and you don't know how to deal with it to make everything better and redeem yourself. You might even be wanting to consider marriage and have someone in mind, but don't know how to take the matter forward in a halal way. Are you looking for advice and guidance, which is also Islamically sound and authentic? If so, then your prayers have been answered. Islam Life Radio is now offering a free, confidential, anonymous, impartial, and non-judgmental counseling service based on the Quran and authentic Sunnah. Email us now at counseling@islamliferadio.com.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala sahbihi wa sallam. Welcome back, dear sisters. We are now on part 6, mashallah tabarakallah, of rulings pertaining to Muslim women by Dr. Saleh Fawzan al-Fawzan. Again, the book that we are coming to a close in is Rulings Pertaining to Muslim Women by Dr. Saleh Fawzan al-Fawzan. So this week we're continuing the chapter on marriage and marriage and divorce. So we're going to start today with the topic, if the woman sees that the husband does not want her, but she wishes to remain with him, what can she do to resolve the situation? The Shaykh opened up this topic with evidence from Surah An-Nisa, which is chapter 4, the women, verse 128. And as it is interpreted, and if a woman fears cruelty or desertion on her husband's part, there is no blame on them if they arrange an amicable settlement between themselves, and such settlement is best. So now the commentary the Shaykh is bringing from Ibn al-Hafid, from al-Hafid Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, who stated, if a woman is afraid that her husband will shun her or turn away from her, then it is permissible for her to relinquish all or some of her rights, including her maintenance, clothing, or sexual relations, from the rights that she has upon him. it is permissible for him to accept this from her. So there is no wrong in her relinquishing those rights, and no wrong on him if he accepts this from her. And concerning this, the Shaykh brought the evidence from Surah An-Nisa, again from 128, and from that verse, as it is interpreted, there is no blame on them if they arrange an amicable settlement between themselves, and such settlement is best. The Shaykh wanted to say, meaning this is better than separation. And then he relayed the story of Sauda bint Sam'a radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased of her, at the time when she grew old, and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to divorce her. She negotiated with him that he retained her, and while she gave her night of sleeping with him, meaning sleeping with him, to Aisha, and he accepted and retained her upon this agreement. So we see here that she gave up her night to Aisha in return to remaining married with the Prophet alayhi salam. So we were told to see the tafsir of Ibn Kathir regarding that. Now the next topic. If the woman hates the man and she does not wish to remain with him, what could she do? Again, if the woman hates the man and she does not wish to remain with him, what could she do? So the Shaykh brought evidence from Al-Baqarah, verse 229. In Al-Baqarah is chapter 2. So chapter 2, known in English as the cow, verse 229. It is interpreted, if you do indeed fear that they would be unable to keep the limits ordained by Allah, there is no blame on either of them if she gives something, meaning all or part of her bridal money, for her freedom, meaning her divorce. Again, Al-Hafiz Ibn Kathir stated in his tafsir, if the husband and wife are in discord with one another, and the woman does not provide the rights of the man, and she hates him, is unable to live with him, then she is allowed to release herself from him by returning what he gave her, meaning of her bridal money, her dowry. There is no problem if her returning this to him. Again, there is no problem in her returning this to him, and no problem if he accepts it from her. And this is known as a khula. Again, this is known as the khula. So I just want to advise real quickly here regarding this khula, mashallah, tabarakallah. It's the Shaykh is making it very clear here that if the marriage is not working out, then she has been given the permission to be released from the marriage. If she's being, again, this is my own commentary here, Ummu Maahir, just making it a little more clear for our new sisters that she does have the ability to be released from the marriage if the marriage is not working, if she's being abused physically or even verbally. Or she just decided this is not working out between us. I don't like him very much at all. So rather than get herself in more trouble in that she wouldn't give her husband her rights, his rights rather, then she has the ability to buy herself out of that marriage, to be released from that marriage by returning the dowry. One more time, by returning the dowry. And so another thing is that I want to caution our sisters, because we see this very often, is that the husband does something and now she's angry and she wants this khula. She's acting very emotionally, and wants the khula right here, right now. We can't do anything to deter her from this. And then once she's been released from that marriage, and it is final, by the way, when she's released from the khula, she's released. So now, she's calmed down some, and she wants to find a way to fix this. Oh, I was angry when I said it, and all kinds of things. So be careful regarding that issue of just asking for that khula out of anger like that, or out of impatience. Now the Shaykh said next, he said, if the woman asks her husband for a divorce without any valid reason, what punishment does she deserve? So pay attention to this. We're talking about just asking for a divorce out of anger, and then the next you don't really feel that way anymore. You change your mind. Pay attention to what he has to say here. If the woman asks her husband for a divorce without any valid reason, what punishment does she deserve? The Shaykh stated here, or brought evidence, as it was narrated from Fawzan radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet alayhi salam said, any woman who asks her husband for a divorce without a valid reason, then the fragrance of Jannah is prohibited for her, meaning that paradise is prohibited for her. This was narrated by Abu Dawood and Tirmidhi, and Ibn Hibban declared it Hasan in his Sahih. This is because the most hateful halal action to Allah is divorce. So the Shaykh went on to say that divorce is only to be used as a last resort. And if it is used before that, it is disliked because of the harm it causes, which is a well-known fact. The need of the situation which drives a woman to seek divorce is that her husband is not fulfilling her rights to such a degree that it becomes a detriment for her to remain with him. As Allah states, he says in Al-Baqarah 2:29, either you remain with her on equitable terms or separate from her with kindness. And he also brought the evidence following that up, 226 and 227 of Al-Baqarah, as it is interpreted, for those who take an oath of abstention, meaning from sexual relations with their wives, a waiting for 4 months is ordained. If then they return, Allah is all forgiving and most merciful. But if their intention is firm for divorce, then Allah hears and knows all things. So again, we want to be careful of seeking a way out of this marriage out of anger. Please take heed or impatience. It is best for a woman to be patient with the situation. However, if it is unbearable, if the marriage is unbearable, then she has every right to be out of that marriage. So Islam does give her that right. But one more time, it shouldn't be abused. This khula shouldn't be abused. I mean, there are some people who, because they're playing with the religion so often, you have some people who they'll get to the limit of the divorces. The husband has already pronounced divorce twice, meaning that the third divorce will be final. This is for pay attention sisters who are new. You have the opportunity the husband has the opportunity to pronounce divorce upon his wife twice and then return. However, the third pronouncement of divorce makes the divorce final. So you have some people who will, the woman now is going to ask for the call-out. And then they can just get remarried again the next week with a new contract. Over and over, new contracts. This is not something that should be done. We shouldn't play with the religion like that. We should not play with marriage and divorce like that. This is a very serious affair. If the woman is asking for this khula without a valid reason, then she could be risking entering into paradise. So we want to be very careful of that matter. This is nothing to play with. Now we go on now to what the woman must do after the termination of her marriage. The Shaykh now brings what the woman must do after the termination of her marriage. He started out saying there are two types of separation between husband and wife. The first occurs during life, the second by death. For both types of separation, the woman must wait for a fixed period of time. Okay, so again, for both types of separation, the woman must wait for a fixed period of time set by the Sharia, during which she may not be married. This is known as the iddah. This is known as the iddah. And the wisdom behind the iddah is that she is still bound by the marriage to ensure that she is not pregnant, so that someone other than the husband from whom she became separated does not have sexual intercourse with her. And if she were to become pregnant, there would be confusion over who the father was, and the right of decency would be lost. Also, the iddah is a token of respect for the previous marriage and for the honor of the ex-husband or the late husband, and demonstrates the effect of the separation on the woman. There are 4 types of iddah. The first type is the iddah of a pregnant woman, which always ends with childbirth. Whether divorce was final or the divorce was reversible, and the separation being from a living husband or a dead one. And the Shaykh, Fawzan, may Allah preserve him, he brought an evidence from Surah At-Talaq, the chapter called the divorce, verse 4. And it's stated in the interpretation, and for those who are pregnant, their prescribed period is until they deliver their babies. And for those who are pregnant, their prescribed period is until they deliver their babies. Now the second type is the iddah of the divorced woman who menstruates, meaning before menopause. Its duration is 3 menstrual periods. Again, its duration is 3 menstrual periods. And as Allah has stated in Al-Baqarah 228, again, divorced women shall make themselves wait from getting married to a new husband for 3 monthly periods. Again, a divorced woman shall make themselves wait for 3 monthly periods. Now the third type of the iddah, the third type is the iddah of the woman who does not menstruate, and she can be of 2 types. A young girl under the age of puberty, meaning that she has not started to menstruate, or an elderly woman who has stopped menstruating. As Allah has decreed the iddah of both types of women in His statement, as it is found in Surah At-Talaq, the divorce, verse 4. As it is interpreted, such of your women as have passed such of your women as have passed the age of monthly courses, for them the prescribed period, if you have any doubts, is 3 months. And for those who have not started menstruating, it is likewise the same. The fourth type is the woman whose husband has died. And Allah has decreed her iddah by His statement that is found in Al-Baqarah 234. It is interpreted, and those of you who die and leave behind widows, they, meaning the widows, shall make themselves wait from getting married after the death of their husband for 4 months and 10 days. 4 months and 10 days. The Shaykh commented, this includes the woman who has had sexual intercourse with her husband and the woman who had not. The prepubescent woman and the older woman who has stopped menstruating. So we're talking about the young woman who has not began menstruating, and then the older woman who has stopped menstruating. He said, but does not include the pregnant woman, because she has been excluded by Allah's statement. And the statement is found in Surah Talaq, verse 4. And as for those who are pregnant, their prescribed period is until they deliver their babies. And he said, Shaykh Fawzan said that this was taken from Al-Hadi al-Nabawi by Ibn Qayyim and the authenticated edition. We now turn to the prohibitions applicable to the woman in her iddah. Again, the prohibitions applicable to the woman in her iddah. Number 1, the ruling concerning marriage proposals to her. Now the Shaykh brings 2 things regarding this matter. Number 1, in a reversible divorce, it is haram to propose to the woman explicitly or by indication. This is because she is treated as if she is still married. Therefore, it is not permissible for anyone to propose to her, and she is still in the custody of her husband. And then in the number 2, in a final divorce. In a final divorce, it is haram to propose to the woman explicitly, but it is allowed to make an indication, as Allah has stated in Al-Baqarah 235. And there is no blame on you if you make a hint of betrothal or conceal it in your hearts. The Shaykh wants to explain, a clear or explicit proposal is the one made by clearly expressing the wish to marry the woman. For example, by saying, I want to marry you. This is because her concern to get remarried again may lead her to inform him. So again, a clear or explicit proposal is the one made by clearly expressing the wish to marry the woman, for example by saying, I want to marry you. And this is because, again, her concern to get remarried again may lead her to inform him that her iddah is over before it's actually over. This is unlike a proposal that is hinted or indicated because it is not emphatic in displaying the wish to marry her, and therefore does not create this situation. Furthermore, the understanding of the above verse shows this. An example of a hint or indication is like saying, I'm interested in someone like you. It is also allowable for the woman in her iddah after a final divorce to answer the hinted proposal with an indication or a hint. But it is not allowable for her to reply to a clear and explicit proposal. And finally, it is not allowable for a woman who is in her iddah after a reversible divorce to answer any proposal, whether it is explicit or hinted. Number 2, it is haram for a woman to contract a marriage with someone during her iddah. This is because of the saying of Allah, the Most High, in Al-Baqarah 235, when he said, and do not resolve on the tie of marriage till the term prescribed is fulfilled. Now, commenting on this, Ibn Kathir said, this means do not make any contracts for marriage until the iddah has finished. There is a consensus among the scholars that the contract is not valid if it takes place during the time of the iddah. Now, the Shaykh brings 2 important facts regarding this. Number 1, the woman who is divorced before the consummation of her marriage with her husband does not have an iddah by the statement of Allah. And this statement is coming from Al-Ahzab, verse 49. And it is interpreted, all you who believe, when you marry believing women and then divorce them before having sexual intercourse with them, no period of iddah have you to count in respect of them. And Ibn Kathir commented on this by saying, there is a consensus on this point among the scholars. If a woman is divorced before having intercourse with her husband, she does not have an iddah and can go and marry as soon as she wishes. She does not have an iddah and she can marry as soon as she wishes. And point number 2, if the woman is divorced before having intercourse with the husband, and yet the bridal money has already been fixed, then she takes half of it. Any woman who is divorced without her bridal money being fixed is entitled to a compensation of an appropriate amount of clothes or similar things. The woman that is divorced after intercourse with the husband receives the bridal money in full. Now, and evidence is coming here from Al-Baqarah 236 as it is interpreted, there is no blame on you if you divorce women before consummation of marriage or the fixation of their bridal money, but bestow on them a suitable gift, the wealthy according to his means and the poor according to his means. And his saying in Al-Baqarah 237, and if you divorce them before consummation but after the fixation of a bridal money for them, then half of the bridal money is due to them. So again, if you divorce them before consummation, but after the fixation of a bridal money for them, then half of the bridal money, meaning the dowry, is due to them. The Shaykh went on to comment, meaning that there is no harm upon you husbands to divorce women before having intercourse with them and before fixing the bridal money. And if there is in that a disappointment for her, then it is made up by his being obliged to pay compensation, the amount of which is specified on every husband according to his position or wealth or poverty. And then Allah mentioned the woman whose bridal money was fixed and ordered that half of it be given to her. Al-Hafiz Ibn Kathir commented by saying, and the having of the bridal money or half of the bridal money in this situation is an issue upon which there is a consensus among the scholars without any disagreement between them. Again, and half of the bridal money in this situation is an issue upon which there is a consensus among the scholars without any disagreement between them. Number 3, the impermissible things for a woman in iddah after the death of her husband. Again, that which is impermissible upon the woman in the iddah after the death of her husband. So Shaykh Fawzan mentioned 5 things are not permissible for the woman who is in iddah after the death of her husband, and this is known as ahdad or mourning. Number 1, all types of perfume. She should not apply perfume to her body or clothes or use anything that is perfumed. This is by the statement of the Prophet alayhi salam when he said in the authentic statement, she should not touch perfume. Again, in the authentic hadith, she should not touch perfume. Okay, so then we go on, and again, this is for the widow. These precautions and impermissibilities are for the widow. Number 2, beautification of her body. It is prohibited for her to dye her hands and feet with henna and all types of beautification such as the kuhl or the eyeliner and different types of skin dye unless she is forced to use kuhl for medicinal purposes and not beautification, in which case she is allowed to use it at night and remove it during the day. There is no harm if she uses medicine for her eyes that contains no beautification. Number 3, beautification with clothes designed to beautify. She should wear plain clothes that do not contain beautification, although there is no set color for her to wear as it is set by local custom, for example, black. So one more time, there is no set color for the widow in her iddah. Number 4, it's impermissible for her wearing jewelry of any type, even rings. And number 5, sleeping anywhere other than the home in which her husband died and left her residing in. And she cannot move anywhere else unless she has a reason that is valid Islamically. And she should not leave to visit the sick or to visit a friend or a relative. It is permissible for her to leave during the day for absolutely essential requirements. Nothing else apart from these 5 things is prohibited from the things that Allah has made permissible for her. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim stated in Al-Hadi al-Nabawi, she is not prohibited from cutting her nails, plucking the hair of her armpits, and cutting the hair which is preferred to be cut, nor from bathing with the lotus leaves and combing her hair with it. So again, she's not prohibited from, again, cutting the nails or the removing the hair in the underarm area and the pubic region. These things should be maintained. And Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah stated in Majmu' al-Fatawa, it is permissible for her to eat anything that Allah has made permissible, like fruit and meat, and also any drink that is permissible. And she is not prohibited from doing any kind of work that is permissible. For example, embroidery, sewing, spinning, and other things which women do. All things which are normally permissible for her outside the iddah period are allowable for her. For example, speaking to those she has a need to speak to among men, if she is covered, and other things. This point that I have mentioned is the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, which the women of the Sahaba used to do when their husbands died. And the Shaykh commented here, what the lay people say, that she should cover her face from the moon and not climb the roof of her house and not talk to men, and that she should shield her face in front of her mahrams and similar things. None of these have any proof, and Allah knows best. So we now turn to chapter 10, laws which protect the nobility and the chastity of a woman. The woman, like the man, is ordered to lower her gaze and remain chaste, as Allah has stated in Surah Nur, the light, verses 30 and 31. Tell the believing men to lower their gaze from looking at forbidden things and guard their private parts from forbidden sexual acts. And that is pure for them. Verily Allah is well acquainted with all that they do. And tell the believing women to lower their gaze from looking at forbidden things and to guard their private parts from forbidden sexual acts. The Shaykh said, our respected Shaykh, Muhammad Amin al-Shanqiti, may Allah have mercy upon him, stated in his tafsir, Allah the Almighty, the Most High, has ordered the believing men and women to lower their gaze and remain chaste, which includes abstaining from fornication, sodomy, meaning homosexuality, lesbianism, nakedness, and exposing the private parts in front of people. And also, Allah has promised those who obey His order in this verse among both men and women with forgiveness and a great reward if they also adapt the qualities mentioned in Surah Al-Ahzab in the statement of Allah, where we find in this statement, verily the Muslim, meaning those who submit to Allah in Islam, men and women, and to His saying, and this is found in Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 35, and the men and the women who guard their chastity, and the men and the women who remember Allah much with their hearts and tongues, for them Allah has prepared forgiveness and a great reward. And he also stated, and lesbianism is the sexual relation that takes place between two women by rubbing of their bodies. This is a terrible sin, with both the women involved deserving a harsh punishment. In Al-Mughni, it states, and if two women rub one another sexually, then they are both cursed fornicators, as is proved by the statement of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, if a woman sexually approaches another woman, they are both fornicators, and they both deserve a punishment set by the ruler, and this is a type of fornication for which there is no prescribed punishment. So Shaykh Fawzan went on to say, so Muslim women, particularly the younger women, should be warned against committing this vile sin. And again, you know, the Shaykh is commenting and mentioning younger women because you're exposed to so much more today than years and years ago. I mean, now we're exposed to, even in the Muslim lands, you have internet. You can see practically anything. And we know here in the West that you now have lesbians on commercials now and regular TV. Now, again, I don't have a TV. One of my younger students in our program told me this, that you now have lesbians on TV commercials now. So it's really being, just really been pushed at the masses of the people. They're really pushing this agenda. So we want to be careful of this. He says, particularly the younger women should be warned about committing this vile sin. Lesbianism is a vile sin, no matter how beautiful and adorned and glorified it's looking these days. This agenda that's being pushed, we are to be warned about this and to be careful of this. Now the Shaykh said, as for lowering the gaze, Ibn al-Qayyim said regarding this duty in his book, quote, regarding the stray glances, they are the scouts and the messengers of lust, and guarding against them is the basis of protection of chastity. Whoever looks at a member of the opposite sex exposes himself to the sources of ruin. The Prophet ﷺ said, O Ali, the stray glance should not be followed with another glance, as the first one, meaning only, is permissible for you. The meaning of a stray glance is the glance which takes place involuntarily and not on purpose. And in Al-Musnad, narrated from the Prophet ﷺ, the glance is one of the poisoned arrows of Iblis, meaning Satan, Shaitan. Again, he said the glance is one of the poisoned arrows of Iblis. And also, and the glance is the cause of most of the troubles which befall a human being, as a stray glance creates a dangerous impulse. The impulse becomes an evil thought. The thought leads to desire. The desire brings about an evil intention which becomes stronger until it becomes a powerful urge. Thus, an action takes place inevitably if there is nothing to prevent it. For this reason, it is said to have patience in lowering one's gaze is easier than bearing the pain which may come after. So the Shaykh went on to comment, so it is upon the Muslim woman to lower and avert her gaze from men and not look at the provocative pictures which are found in various media magazines, TV, and video in order to protect herself from evil consequences. For how many times have unguarded glances caused the lover grief and sorrow, and how many a fire have started from a small spark. Number 2. Another means by which a woman's chastity can be protected is by avoiding listening to songs and flutes, meaning music. Imam Ibn Qayyim stated, as it comes, he says, among the tricks of the shaitan by which he deceives those who have little knowledge, wisdom, or religiousness, and by which he entraps the hearts of the ignorant and the wrongdoers, is listening to whistling, clapping, and music with prohibited instruments which divert the hearts from the Quran, makes them devoted to sin and disobedience, and thus is the Quran of the shaitan. Again, and thus is the Quran of the shaitan or Satan, a thick barrier from Ar-Rahman and the charm of homosexuality and fornication. By it, the sinful lover gains from his beloved one of the aim of his desire. Also, as for listening to the woman or effeminate men, this is one of the worst sins and one of the most potent ways in which religion is corrupted. And there is no doubt that the conscientious man will prevent his family from listening to music in the same way he keeps them away from sources of ill repute. He also stated, it is well known among people that if a man finds it difficult to gain the favor of a woman, he tries hard to make her listen to music in order that she may soften towards him. This is because women are very sensitive to sound. If the sound is music, she is aroused in two ways, from the sound itself and from its meaning. Pay attention, sisters. Of course, this is a worldwide issue. It really is. It's not just us. This is also found in the Muslim lands because music is a very serious problem. But we know here that you're just inundated. In the West, you can't even go into any store anymore. You can't even go into a dollar store, a supermarket, to buy gas without their music being in the background, because they want to make you more relaxed, to get you to purchase more. They know that the more relaxed you are, then the more you're going to spend more money. So we see this, how they're using this to relax the public. So we see what the Shaykh is saying here and how valid his point is. So he also said, if these charms are combined with drums and flutes and effeminate erotic dancing, then the woman, if she were to be ensnared by any music, would be ensnared by this music, by Allah the Eternal. How many a free woman has been turned into a whore, he says, has been interpreted here, promiscuous woman, through music. How many have been turned into this promiscuous woman through music? So the Muslim woman should fear Allah and be warned of this dangerous sickness of character, listening to music, which is distributed among the Muslims by many means and in various forms, which has caused many ignorant girls to try and obtain it from its distributors and exchange it with one another. So number 3 now, among the means of preserving chastity is to prevent the woman from traveling unless she has a mahram to protect her from the desires of the evil and the sinful. Authentic hadith prohibit the travel of a woman without a mahram. And we remember that the mahram means one of her family members that she is prohibited from marrying, which does not include the cousin. Mahram does not include a cousin, her brother, her father, her uncle, her grandfather. These are her mahram. And the Shaykh wanted to say, among them is the hadith narrated by Ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, who said, the messenger of Allah, alayhi salam said, a woman must not travel for more than 3 days unless she is accompanied by a mahram. And this hadith was agreed upon. Abu Sa'id, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated that the Prophet alayhi salam prohibited a woman to travel the distance of 2 days or 2 nights unless her husband or a mahram accompanied her. And this hadith is agreed upon. And from Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu, he said that the Prophet alayhi salam said, it is not permissible for a woman to travel the distance of a day and a night unless she is accompanied by a mahram. And this hadith is agreed upon. The intended meaning in these hadith of 3 days or 2 days and a day and a night is by the means of transport that were in use at that time, including travel by foot and on mounted animals. The apparent difference between these hadith of the distance being 3 days or 2 days or a night and a day or less has been answered by the scholars as the meaning that the woman is prohibited from anything that is considered as travel. Again, the woman is prohibited from anything that is considered as travel. Now he has brought here some evidence from Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, as is stated in Sharh Sahih Muslim. So the conclusion is that for anything considered as a journey, the woman is prohibited from it unless she is not accompanied by her husband or a mahram, whether it is for 3 days or 2 days or a day, a night, or other than that. Because of the narration of Ibn Abbas, which is general and is the last of the narrations of Imam Muslim, which has preceded, the woman must not travel unless she is accompanied by a mahram. The woman must not travel unless she is accompanied by a mahram. He said this includes anything regarded as travel, and Allah knows best. Shaykh Fawzan went on to explain, as for those who have issued fatwa permitting the woman to travel with a group of women or for an obligatory hajj, this is not in accordance with the sunnah. Again, this is not in accordance with the sunnah. As Imam al-Khattabi stated as he stated with the tahdib of Ibn al-Qayyim, the Prophet alayhi salam warned the woman from traveling unless she had a man as her mahram. Thus, the permissibility of her leaving to travel for hajj without the conditions set by the Prophet alayhi salam is not in accordance with the sunnah. So if her leaving without a mahram is a sin, it is not permissible for her to begin her hajj, as it constitutes obeying an order from Allah that will lead to disobeying Him. Shaykh Fawzan said, I say, while they themselves have not permitted the woman to travel without a mahram under all circumstances, instead they only permitted her to travel for an obligatory hajj alone, as Imam Nawawi stated in Al-Majmu'ah. It is the woman's travel, it is not permissible for non-obligatory worship, commercial expeditions, or visiting unless accompanied by a mahram. So we want to be careful of this matter. He's making it very clear regarding traveling for just, you want to go off to the Bermudas in our country, you're going off just for a vacation and travel and this kind of thing without a mahram. This is absolutely impermissible. He went on to say, and as for those who have become careless in this time regarding a woman traveling without a mahram for any types of travel, not a single scholar whose opinion is acceptable agrees with them. They claim that her mahram will place her in the plane, then another mahram will meet her when she arrives and she reaches the country she intends. Because the plane, they claim, is a safe place as there are many passengers, both men and women. Shaykh Fawzan said, our reply to them is, certainly not, as the plane is even more dangerous than other forms of transport because the passengers mix freely and she might sit next to a man. Perhaps the plane will be diverted to another airport. She will not find anyone to receive her and will thus be exposed to danger. What would be the fate of a woman stranded in a country she doesn't know without a mahram? And this, his point is a very relevant point because that even on these planes, these people are drinking and alcohol and all kinds of things are going on. So she's going to be subjected to that. So, this is a very valid point that the Shaykh is making. Number 4, another means of protecting chastity is the prohibition of the seclusion of a woman with a man who is not her mahram. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever believes in Allah on the last day should not allow himself to be alone with a woman who is not accompanied by a mahram, because the third person present will be the shaitan, Satan. It is narrated from Amr ibn Rabi'ah, may Allah be pleased with him, that he said, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, it is not permissible for a man to be alone with a woman who is not permissible for him, for indeed the third person with them will be the shaitan, unless the third of them is a mahram. Al-Majid stated in Al-Muntaqa, these two hadiths were narrated by Ahmed and is preceded by a hadith with the same meaning from Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him, which is agreed upon. Imam Shawkani stated in Nil al-Awtar, there is a consensus on the prohibition of seclusion with a woman, as has been quoted by Al-Hafiz and Al-Fath in Al-Fath. The reason for the prohibition is what is mentioned in the hadith, that the third of them is the shaitan, and it is his presence that causes them to sin. And as for having a mahram present, then being with the woman is permissible because the occurrence of sin is stopped by his presence. Some women and their guardians are careless with certain types of seclusion. So again, some women and their guardians are careless with certain types of seclusion. In the first case, the seclusion of a woman with the relative of her husband and her revealing her face in front of him. This type of seclusion is more dangerous than others. The Prophet ﷺ said, beware of entering the presence of women. So a man from the Ansar said, O Messenger of Allah, what about her brother-in-law? He, the Prophet ﷺ, said, the brother-in-law is death. Again, he said, the brother-in-law is death. This was narrated by Ahmed, Imam Bukhari, and At-Tirmidhi, who authenticated it. And he said, the meaning of the word al-hamu is said, he is the brother of the husband. It is as if he is disliked her. It is as if he disliked her to be alone with him. And Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar stated, An-Nawawi said, the scholars of Arabic language have agreed that the ahma, or the plural of hamu, are the relatives of the husband of the woman, such as his father, uncle, brother, nephew, cousin, and others like them. And its meaning is the context of the hadith, and the meaning of its context in the hadith is the husband's male relatives excluding his father and their fathers and his son and their sons, as they are all mahrams for his wife. It is permissible for them to be alone with her. These are not described as being death. And he said, the customs of the people have become lax. A man may seclude himself with the wife of his brother, as he might assume his place after his brother's death, meaning he could marry her. He is therefore more deserving to be prohibited. Shawkani stated in Nil al-Awtar, his statement, al-hamu, is the death, meaning that the danger from him is greater than from others, in the same way that the fear of death is greater than fear of anything else. So the Muslim sister should fear Allah and not become careless in this area. Even if the people themselves have become careless, this is because the deciding factor for any situation is the ruling of the Sharia and not the custom of the people. Number 2. Some women and their guardians have become careless or lax by allowing the woman to be alone in a car with the driver who is not her mahram, even though this is the type of seclusion which is prohibited. Now we're talking about the driver, meaning these men who drive the women around, private drivers, and also that could also include a taxi driver. So we want to pay attention to this. He says, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Ibrahim Ali Shaykh, the Mufti of Saudi Arabia, may Allah preserve him, stated in Majmu' al-Fatawa, Now, no doubt remains that the entry of a woman into a car alone with the driver of the car without a mahram to accompany her is a blatant evil. It contains many evils that should not be underestimated. Even if the woman is a modest young woman or a chaste woman who speaks to men, the man who allows this to happen to the women of his family is weak in his religion, deficient in his manliness, and has little honor with respect to his family. The Prophet ﷺ said, never is a man left alone with a woman except that the shaitan is the third of them. So her travel in a car with a man is worse than being alone with him in a house or situations like it. This is because he is able to go with her wherever he wishes, inside or outside the country, with or without her approval. This creates many evils, much worse than simply being secluded with the woman in a house. The Shaykh wanted to say, it is imperative that the male who is her mahram, who accompanies her to prevent this seclusion, is an adult. It is not sufficient for a child to be with her. Some women think that if a child accompanies them, then seclusion is prevented, although this is an incorrect view. Imam Nawawi stated, if a man and a woman seclude themselves without a third person being present, this is haram by the agreement of the scholars. The same ruling applies if those who are not feared because of their young age accompanied her. The state of the seclusion being haram still remains. Number 3, some women and their guardians have become lax regarding the woman visiting a doctor for treatment, and this is a great evil and a great danger. It is not permissible to allow it to happen and remain silent. Shaykh Muhammad Ibrahim stated in Majmu' al-Fatawa, in any case, seclusion with a woman is haram Islamically. Even if the man were a doctor who is treating her. From the hadith, never is a man left alone with a woman except that shaitan is the third of them. So it is imperative that someone be with her, either her husband or one of her male guardians. If none are available, then at least of her women relations. If there is no one to accompany her from among those mentioned, and her sickness is dangerous or severe, it is not possible to delay it, then at the very least she should be accompanied by a male nurse or someone like her in order to avoid seclusion, which is prohibited. Also, he said, it is not permissible for a woman to be alone with a doctor, even if she herself is a female doctor who is a colleague or a nurse, or a blind teacher with a female student, or an air hostess with a man who is not one of her mahrams. These are areas in which people have become lax in the name of so-called, actually false civilization, so-called civilization, and blind following of the disbelievers, and out of negligence with the laws of the Sharia. There is no power, no strength except with Allah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. It is not allowable for a man to be alone with a maid who is employed in his house, or for a man's wife to be alone with a male domestic helper. The problem concerning domestic helpers, and he means servants here, is a severe one that has afflicted many people today. Due to the preoccupation of women with studies and work outside the home, this makes it necessary for the believers, both the men and the women, to be extremely careful and to take necessary precautions and not to adopt corrupt customs. Finally, he said, it is prohibited for a woman to shake hands with a man. It is prohibited for a woman to shake hands with a man who is not her mahram. Shaykh Abdulaziz ibn Abdullah ibn Baz, the general president of Iftah, Dawah, and Guidance, said in Majmu' al-Fatawa, he stated, it is not permissible for women to shake hands with other than their mahrams at all, whether they are young or old, and whether the person she greets is a youth or an old man, as this entails the danger of fitna affecting every person involved. It has been authentically reported from the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salam, the hand of the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salam, never touched the hand of a woman ever. He used to take their pledge of allegiance by word of mouth alone. There is no difference between whether she shakes his hand with or without a cover because of the generality of the proofs and to prevent the means by which fitna can take place. Shaykh Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti in his tafsir stated, no, that it is not permissible for a man to shake the hand of a woman, and it is not permissible for any part of his body to touch any part of her body. The proof of this is that, firstly, it has been established that the Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, I do not shake the hands of women. And as Allah has stated, you have indeed in the Messenger of Allah a perfect example. So the Shaykh went on to state, so we are enjoined not to shake the hands of women in obedience and adherence to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The hadith that we have mentioned has previously been mentioned in Surah Al-Hajj regarding the prohibition of wearing brightly colored clothes at all times, in ihram and outside of ihram for men, and in Surah Al-Ahzab regarding the verse of the hijab. The fact that the Prophet ﷺ did not shake the hands of women even at the time of receiving the oath of allegiance is a clear proof that a man should not shake the hand of a woman, nor should any part of his body touch any part of hers, because of the merest form of physical contact is to shake hands. So if the Prophet ﷺ abstained from this physical contact at a time in which it was most appropriate, that at the time of receiving the Pledge of Allegiance, this indicates that it is prohibited. It is not for anyone to go against the Prophet ﷺ, as he is the one who sets laws for this nation, meaning the Ummah, by his actions, statements, and silent approval. The second point is what we have previously mentioned, that a woman is awra, meaning a body which is to be covered completely, and it is obligatory for her to wear hijab, that the order to lower the gaze is due to the danger of fitna occurring. There is no doubt, he said, that a physical contact between two bodies creates a stronger instinct and a stronger lure towards fitna than a look by the eyes. Any sensible person knows that. The third point is that this is a means by which gratification is gained from a woman due to the lack of taqwa, meaning fear of Allah, in these times, the lack of religious duty, and slackness in avoidance of dubious acts. We have been informed many times that some men kiss their wives' sisters mouth to mouth, and they call this type of kissing, which is haram by the consensus of the ulama, a form of greeting. You hear them say, greet her, meaning kiss her. The truth, however, of which there is no doubt, is to distance oneself from all forms of fitna and doubtful things and their causes. Among the greatest causes of fitna is for a man to touch any part of a woman. Thus, any pretext which leads to these actions, which are haram, must be stopped. To conclude, this Shaykh said, the believing men and the believing women should remember the guidance of Allah to them in his statement, as it is found in Surah An-Nur, verse 30 and 31. Tell the believing men to lower their gaze from looking at forbidden things and guard their chastity. That is pure for them. Verily Allah is well acquainted with all that they do. And tell the believing women to lower their gaze from looking at forbidden things and to guard their chastity and not to display their adornment, except that must appear thereof. And they should draw their veils over their bosoms and not display their adornments, except to their husbands or their fathers or their husbands' fathers or their sons or their husbands' sons or their brothers or their brothers' sons or their sisters' sons or their, meaning Muslim women. Their women here is interpreted, sisters, as Muslim women, or the slaves whom their right hands possess, or simple-minded male servants free of sexual desires, or small children who have no sense of feminine sex. And they should not strike their feet in order to draw attention to their hidden ornaments. And all of you ask Allah to forgive you all, O believers, that you may attain bliss. And finally, the Shaykh said, concluding this book, the rulings pertaining to Muslim women, Shaykh Fawzan said, and all praises be to the Lord of the worlds, and may Allah bless our Prophet Muhammad, his family, and his companions, and grant them peace. So this concludes the Shaykh's book, Rulings Pertaining to Muslim Women by Dr. Saleh Fawzan. We ask Allah to reward our Shaykh and to keep him in the greatest of health, the best of health, and that we continue to benefit from his beneficial knowledge. May Allah preserve him and grant him the greatest weight on a scale of good. Ameen. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Have you ever thought about what it takes to know the ledge? People say, know the ledge. What does that exactly mean? Well, let me see if I can sum it up for you in a short poem. Now is the time to show greatness and uplift. With knowledge and wisdom, we share the ultimate gift. We recognize our Creator who provides and sustains us, who gives our life balance and constantly maintains us. Our broadcast to the people is molded by truth. For the men and the women, and especially the youth, we reach out to those from all walks of life, no matter where you come from and no matter the type. Our goal is quite simple, and that's education and unity. With a smile and the salams, we embrace our community. There is no secret to success, just a desire to learn, because the blessings of Allah is what we seek to earn. So lend us an ear and bring an open mind, and be cautious, not careless, and be aware of the times. All it takes is one slip if you're living on life's edge, and unfortunately some fall because they don't know the ledge.